This is the Interstice podcast. I am davetrippin. Welcome back. Big shout out and thanks, of course, to everyone who supports me here, be you a viewer on Spotify or iTunes, wherever else, or the channel, and especially to my patrons. Thanks very much for supporting me. You make this all possible, and if you're not already supporting me there, please do consider doing so. Usual caveat before getting into this here this evening. If you would like to get your questions answered, please do write to me at davetrippinon@gmail.com, and it usually ends up one way or another into the podcast. So, exciting. Last time somebody commented, they said, it still sounds echoey. That's because I wasn't using my mic, and I wasn't using my mic because I forgot my laptop. Or not forgot, I was super tired and left it at the school, because now I'm using that for like presentations and things like that. So it's back. And I'd like to think, the full setup. I'm still messing around with my ghetto lighting, which is like half decent. I got my thing down here, which makes it kind of cool. This is a little bit better, but I think I can tweak this. It's about $90 compared with, I see like minimal setups costing something like, $600, but I'm quite proud of what is achieved here for under $200. So, what is going on? What's happening? Well, I'd be remiss not to talk about how amazing the biography is that I'm reading of Caesar right now. About 600 pages in to this 1,600 page epic. And it's cool. I was talking before in the previous podcast about how meditative it is, where I can tell how distracted I am and how much shit is going on in my life when I read, and then, a page later, I'm like, I have no idea exactly what was said because I wasn't paying attention. My mind was drifting elsewhere while I was trying to focus on this. So, pretty cool, pretty amazing. Some of the details of things. He's about 40 years old in the book now. And there's he had done all these incredible accomplishments at such a young age. But there's this great story where he arrives. I'm not sure where the statue was, but sees a statue of Alexander the Great and is visibly upset because he feels like he's accomplished so little. But by this point, compared to anyone's today's standard, would have been like the most accomplished, ridiculous person in the world. There was this fantastic story about how he's so confident. This was something that he was a flashy dresser, super confident, super risky, took out massive debt, and was always had his eye on being able to reach new levels of kind of aristocratic success that would then give him more power, then warrant his loan. So he's always out on the line. But there's this great story where when he was younger, we'll say probably let's say in his early 30s, he got captured. He was to go to an Asian province, and he got captured by these pirates. And the story goes, and it seems to be corroborated by a number of sources, that when he was captured, this was customary at the time. This sort of thing was always happening. So less of a big deal than you might think it was in terms of a risk to his life, when all these pirates wanted was money, of course. And so they asked for an amount, and he's said to have laughed in the pirates' faces and said, you could get at least, 6 times that for me. I'm worth that much to you alive. And it shows how inexperienced you are to have not asked for a more significant sum of money. So you're pathetic. And it went on that when he was hanging out with them before he was eventually recovered, that he was whenever they would pull ashore, he was playing games with them, whatever, probably something like soccer, only requires a ball, but really unintimidated, totally upbeat the whole time, and telling him how he was worth so much more than they had initially asked, which you might think, until you hear the end of the story, the conclusion, that was kind of stupid, because now he's invited them to simply ask for more money, which might reduce the chances of him being recovered, but he was, and so he ended up being correct. It was explained that in the region that he was in, the reason why it would be so easy for the funds to be raised for his release is that if you were one of these people that they would go to for the ransom, then if you had paid for his escape, it was like an incredible political opportunity for you, because you can be said to have saved the life of this very significant person in Rome. So he tells them off for being such cheapskates when it comes to collecting some cash for his ransom. And the amount that he says he should be collected for is obtained. And upon being released, so they held up their end of the bargain, they got paid. On his release, he went into like whatever town it was where he was recovered, and immediately went about raising ships, and then raided the pirates and had them all killed. So he counterattacked them, raising his own navy, or mini navy at the time, because it wasn't like some massive hundreds of ships or something, some small amount of them, but counterattacked and then recovered the bounty. So he got the bounty back. It's this great accomplishment also for Rome, that he had cleared this, hive of villainy, and recovered the ransom that he was then able to give back to these people who had paid for it in the first place. So it's chock-a-block full of stories like that I'm really, really enjoying. I love this kind of stuff. It's a great way that I find. I love fiction. I love all of this stuff that I read, but I do find when you read history like this, where I'll read nonfiction, but I'll read something like on lifespan, I like the fact that you are again with history getting another story, and then it has that extra spice, we'll call it, that because it actually happened, it blows your mind even more. You're like, wow, I can't believe what I'm reading actually happened. And is no end of inspiration as well. I like reading about these people, when so much of what we hear about Caesar is that he immediately, all you think of him being is like the emperor of Rome, the great dictator. But when you hear about the rest of his life, although he was in the higher echelons of aristocracy, his family was fallen out of favor. It took him not his whole life, but like this significant period of time before he reached his ultimate goals. And that's always reassuring for me, for someone who's on not by any means a fast track. And I try to be genuine with myself. I think that nor do I want to be. I'm happy. I would rather it be that I do something here on the channel that you really enjoy, that is more cerebral, that has more of a mark. I'd like to do something that, at the same time is simply enjoyable. You are entertained. That it's something that leaves more of a mark on people than that they, we so often consume content from YouTube where we watch it and then we immediately forget it. It's cool to me that something would leave a lasting, indelible mark on you. Not saying it all is. I've done some pretty lowbrow stuff on my channel as well, but I like knowing that there's all these people through time eternal, through history, that have long stories and long journeys to their success. The journey to my success is being able to do this full time. So I think I've taken a much more humble goal than conquering Rome, but I forgive me for drawing parallels with Caesar. It's great stuff. It's really, really good. The excitement never stops in terms of what's gone on here. I think observationally, when I look around now, did I say? I'm starting to do the Japanese, mixing up the L and the R. When I look around right now, and it's incredible to me what's happened in Japan in terms of the, that which shall not be named. But I'm really, really proud of how kind of considerate people are here. You can say that it comes from cultural pressure, and yes, there's a large degree of that, but certainly there's cultural pressure. But then people generally, not only is there cultural pressure, there's cultural pressure everywhere, but people are willing to go along with that. And so I think a great wave of suffering here has been prevented by the consideration that Japanese people have for each other, and their willingness to take precautions with their health, which is wonderful. I think that's great. Not to say that doesn't appear to be any near end in sight yet, because I like to joke with my friends right now. I will not be going back to Canada for this summer, whereas I usually would. And I skipped it last year because I was like, you know what? It just didn't seem like the right time. I've never skipped going back to Canada. And so, hey, let's just let it go for 1 year. And then this happens this year. So I completely understand, and I want to be, respectful of the gravity of the situation. I want to handle this with dignitas, to borrow the Roman term. But I do feel a little bit like Odysseus on the Odyssey at this point, although it's shorter than his, but how I've been away from the homeland for some time now. And it really, breaks my heart. I would love to be back. I guess that's something, I don't even know to call it homesickness. I wouldn't even necessarily call it that. That's not like a reoccurring theme for me at all, because I've always talked about before, many videos, how there's something of, if you take a step back and you notice what contrast gives you. I love contrast as it relates to going back to visit my home, because when you go back, it's this incredibly special thing that you get to experience each time. Now, granted, to have the kind of contrast that I'm talking about, you've got to have those 12 months away. But you definitely, if you're like me and you're somebody who does like to go back, then you feel more than 12 months, more acutely, certainly, than it's not all the same. It doesn't just all wash together for me. I notice now that I haven't gone back in that period of time. I have such incredible memories there. Like, I always go back to the island. I got a friend who lives there. Probably, actually, almost certainly the friend that I stay in most close contact with, aside from my friend Drew here. I do not have a large social circle. I probably do, though, have a surprising number of very close friends. Usually, people who have close friends, it's like just a couple. Whereas, I'm probably somewhere near a dozen or something like that. So I do, for someone who would regularly be considering their life in terms of a smaller social group, it is smaller, but the quality of it is off the charts. I was thinking about that recently in terms of what it is that we try and accomplish in life, and really where it's great. Like, by empowering ourselves, we are a node in a network. That's me stealing that from Jordan Peterson. But it's really true. You really, really are. And I've taken a lot of time recently because of big, tumultuous changes in my life, coming out to this new job. And not necessarily to say that what I do creatively is on hold, but there's all these things that have coalesced that prevent me from being creative in the same way. It's easy to look at my channel, I think, sometimes, because people cherry pick what it is that they view, and they're like, oh, this is a guy who stands in front of a camera and does a podcast. But my true passion that I enjoy most when I am in the flow is like when I can go to some really kind of off the beaten path, or find some beautiful place and show that to you, and do it with kind of like the utmost care, with the whole like premeditated shots that I would take, the color grading, the in some cases that I've written like whole scripts for the sort of stuff that I do, and that can't really happen right now. So I've tried to think about, if I'm not doing these things as creatively for myself as I would, much as I'm still trying to maintain it, and I enjoy spending this time with you, how can I be more appreciative or more supportive of the kind of successes that my friends are having? Because they're doing some crazy stuff. I can disclose now, like I did in my live stream, like Drew has this incredible project that he's working on, and is now underway. Although, you want to talk, I say this sob story about me not being able to like get out and do these more ambitious projects. Like I'm citing now Drew, who started a business in Kyoto, and he spent the last, I can't remember, this has been many years in the making. So it was like first to make sure that he could get the properties that he would be allowed to develop. And these I've done a whole documentary for, are these kyo machiya, which are these traditional, beautiful, like kind of cultural heart of Kyoto, for the fact that they were both residences and business places, and that they're so intertwined with the sort of like the way that they evolved with the city, and how nowadays they're getting knocked down left, right, and center. This is eyes wide open as well. There are design elements in them that is like totally flawed and old fashioned. For example, the staircases were often like super steep and little tiny Japanese feet, and so the steps on them are very, very dangerous, but they can be restored. And that is exactly what Drew has done. And he's created this incredible, beautiful, what would be a shared workspace with a more humanistic touch to it. So he's got like it's not a full bar, but he's got like a couple of beer taps, and he has a relationship with a friend there who works at, it's a Kyoto brewing like company, and so they're supplied by like incredible like fresh brew little mini kegs that they have. So you can sign up to be a part of this workspace, and you could then what would you call that, collaborate or meet other people that are, you know, like-minded entrepreneurs. And it's essentially like if you were to rent office space, but if that office was really, really fucking cool. And I mean, like a centerpiece of this, I made a video for him very briefly. They have all sorts of creative events through it too. That you see the courtyard. So you enter in like this beautiful quintessential Kyoto little alleyway. I'll be making videos to show off and like, you know, give an experience of what it's like to be there. Soon when we can find time and, you know, the circumstances allow us to. But you go through this little tiny walkway, and as I say, quintessentially like Kyoto. And I love that too, where it's like not as though Tokyo isn't quintessentially Japanese, but I love the older elements that you find that are still vitally intact, that really do transport you in a different way. All experiences are subjective and different and relative, and I love this relatively different experience that you get there. I love the mega city of Tokyo, but I love the personality, the very, very personal experience of the Kyomachiya. So you walk down this little like unassuming off of the street. This is another thing too that gives you that kind of, I've talked about this before, from what is it, Spirited Away, where it's like, you know, things feel magical when you look down this alley and you have no idea what could be there. But when you go down to the end of the alley, you find this like incredibly beautiful place. And so you walk down the alley, and then there's a couple different entrances into the machiyas that he restored, one of which enters into the courtyard. And I've taken the long way around to say this to you. But within there is 100-year-old Japanese maple, one of these momijis, and it is this incredible centerpiece to the whole. There's several businesses around this courtyard. I believe Drew has developed 2 of the buildings on one side, and then the other side has, I believe it's a restaurant, and also like I think like a coffee house, but I'm not sure like to what degree. Like, are they actually making the coffee beans? It might be like a roastery. I don't know what you call a place that makes the kind of beans, but yeah, that's what's there. And this is so cool. The courtyard itself, because of this momiji tree and the beautiful garden that's been developed there, was one of Drew's friends, Tomo-san, who's actually, he was in the documentary with Drew that I made on the Kyomachi. He was talking about them. He designed the whole garden there. The man is a master. He deserves the title. It's in his family lineage, and he's continuing it. It's so beautiful, like the changing of the colors within the courtyard on this momiji. And on the second floor of the machiya, which is, the first floor is more like many leather-bound books and kind of places to kick back and relax, and where you would have the mini bar, the couple of taps. But the upstairs is more officially the workspace, and the workspace has this beautiful window out the side that looks out over the courtyard and out next to the tree. And every single season is, of course, so distinct because of the changing colors of the leaves, whether they are on the tree or falling off, whatever that may be. It's incredibly beautiful. So I've taken, again, the long way around to say this is a really cool thing to do, right? But he's done this as the world has been hit by, 2020. 2020 is probably not the best year, if you were looking at the numbers, to open a business. It's definitely not. And so I really feel for Drew, and I mean, all I've wanted to do is I want to contribute to the project in whatever, small way that I can. If there were not the situation that exists right now, I'd be able to be there more frequently. I'd be making vlogs. I'd be making videos to interview the people who are working there. Drew's partner is, guy's a saint. He's there's just people when you meet them where you're like, this is an awesome dude. His name's Kosuke. He's an old friend of Drew's from when Drew was initially coming to Japan many, many years ago. And he's an architect, and I believe helped in the design. I think Drew he was studying architecture until he went to work with his brother's company. That's another part of Drew's fascinating history. Drew was also studying in architecture, but never finished the degree, I believe, because he was pulled in that direction because his brother was like, hey, come be head of sales and try and get us into Japan because of your sweet N1. His brother also has a high level of Japanese. They both lived here when they were very young, but Drew made a more concerted effort in the aftermath of them going away that he kept it up. He restudied it again, got the N1, really mastered it, and then immersed himself continuously since then in the culture and the community, which is a big part of Kyoto as well. You're not going to get into a situation like Drew has, restoring these buildings, unless you were making yourself an active part of the community. And I love it too because his approach is one that's really, it really helps because I think people are shooting themselves in the foot on either extremity. You have people who are interested in the Kyomachi and restoring them and keeping them around in Kyoto, except the problem there is that they're so hell-bent on a traditional way of doing it that they can't see, they get in their way. And then you have people who are hyper-modernized and like, no, it can only be this way. It can't have any of this, why we'll tear them down, we'll do something better. That doesn't acknowledge the sort of, what is good in something is the experience. And there is so much experience that comes from the history that these have and the design that they have as well. And Drew is really tuned into both of these things. And I think it's why it makes him as well. It's made him a bridge, like in any business venture that he's had, whether he was working with his brother when they were developing this software, which was later bought out by Google, doing pretty good. Or now, having immersed himself in these communities, that he understands both sides. Someone similar to this, I think, was Abraham Lincoln. He knew how to navigate these difficult waters. There's some really fantastic quote. I read his biography, I think a definitive biography, talking about how to get out of your own way. and Drew does it. But given the times that we live in right now, man, talk about a difficult time to have made this kind of endeavor. And I want to be as supportive as possible. And it's a great, I think, almost distraction for me where I'm like, if I can't necessarily do all the things that I would right now, whether it be like at the new job, getting acclimatized to the amount of hours that I have, whether it being sort of travel restrictions due to safety concerns, that you can make a difference though. That if just leave a message to Drew, like, yo, what's up? Do you need something edited? You want some footage done? You want, let's talk empire. Let's establish you even further. I think of that analogy of, King Arthur? And I love that idea when you think of your circle of friends as you are the knights of the round table, and the whole point of the table is that you are at equidistance from each other, and you are all looking inwards kind of to the same point at the same distance, and so you are equals. which might be me being a little bit generous with what I've accomplished in my life, as contrasted with what Drew has done with his. But I think at its core, though, I'm trying to access in myself something that is more selfless, that does not require me to be at the center. I think there was a quote which I used to look at unfavorably before, that was like, you'll either be successful or you'll become a philosopher. And I thought that, kind of bitterly, cynically of that, I thought, so basically a philosopher is when you failed. But I do think it's more than that. I think if you are a philosopher where nothing is immutable, that you're either successful or you become a philosopher, and a philosopher is what enables you to continue onwards, that you might reach success. And in the meantime, that there's something incredibly noble about what it is that you're doing, that you don't become whiny, you're not a little bitch, you don't complain about the hand that you've been dealt. And I'm in no way always successful. I made that video about that recently, talking about how you got to accept in life there's just points where you fail. You don't handle things with grace. You are not stoic, but that's okay. Doesn't mean you stop trying, though. That's kind of my mentality. So I've been thinking about, contacting a few friends, seeing how they're doing, see if I can be a bit of a light for other people, to be patient when I get emails all the time, and it can be like cards on the table. Again, speaking to you here, I've like, one thing I pride myself on, I saw the best comment, perhaps that's a bit of hyperbole, but I saw a comment that I loved so much recently, where someone had said, it really does feel like when I watch your video, it feels like you're talking to me personally. And in a way, I am. I'm not, at least now, the way that I want to speak to you is personally. Like it's you and I having a conversation, and we are across from each other as peers. It's very, very, very important to me. So yeah, considering my situation, considering myself relative to the people that I really care about, considering myself relative to the incredibly worse situations that exist around the world compared to what it is that I'm going through right now, that I should be patient for that reason. It's great. So yeah, I think about when people write me, that I want to be patient for them, because sometimes I'm human. I'll read an email and I'll be like, this again, or I feel I've been misinterpreted, but I take the time, like, okay, if you're not better in any other way, be better for this person who has contacted you, because I've seen now, I've done this long enough that I see a difference that I've made. I see that if you're patient and you try and help people, you can, which is a really reassuring thing, given how difficult it is to create meaning in our lives. And I've really, really enjoyed that. And patience and acknowledging that you are not always the center is really, really useful in doing so. All right, so now let's jump into the second half here. There's an interesting talk about Drew's business, but let's jump into the second half and check out some emails. Let's head in here with Sassy Lynn. That's a good name. Okay, this is interesting. This is a sort of salary negotiations question that we have here. I don't know what to say. I don't know what figure to ask. I heard the benefits are all paid, but I don't know how to confirm it. I'm afraid to sound too strong to these people and eventually lose the offer. It's in meow, 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 and the thought of living in the countryside doesn't scare me. I just don't know what to expect and how I should price myself. So I didn't see here, and for brevity's sake, I won't read through too thoroughly, because this is actually pretty significantly long, that it depends. It does depend on your experience and the size of your nuts. So I would probably go, absolutely, if you have a private direct hire gig, there's no way that you go for anything less than $300,000 a month. No way anything less than that. That's the bare minimum you should be getting. $300,000 a month, bare minimum. And then it depends on your experience. So the fact that you could have years of experience going into this would mean something. And I would say you're as powerful as you know that you are. And by that I mean, how much do you need this job? And how much are you able to continue looking if you don't get it? So that can mean that if you are confident and you think that, well, I could take other positions, I'm of value, then of course you would want to stack up those yens a little bit more. I would say ask somewhere in the realm of 350,000, because I like to think it's a question of maturity. This is something, in my experience, as the channel has grown, and not these opportunities are, falling off trees, but a large part of me being able to, if I was ever requested in the rare occasion to do some sort of professional video, a freelance video for someone, then my success came in finally saying to myself, I know now that I have experience, and hell or high tide, I will ask for this amount in compensation, because if you're not going to pay me that, then you don't respect me, because that is, in all fairness, what it is that I am worth. And then sprinkled in there, of course, is a little bit how big your nuts are, one more time, that you can go in one direction. You'd never want to exceed your nuts. You want to basically ride the edge, where if you weren't willing to pay yourself that, I don't think there's any pride in taking somebody for a ride either. So don't overshoot, but don't be afraid to be bold and own what it is that you think that you are worth. Bare minimum, though, I would say is 300,000. And then in that case, like, good Lord, you don't need to hesitate for a moment to ask for that. So yeah, I would assess how much experience you have, use that as a base, and then going from there, it's kind of at your discretion how much you want to play with that sort of wiggle room, which is, I'm worth this much, I know. I'm worth this much, I know, but what am I going to play with in terms of, like, another 10% or something like that? Because negotiation is a skill in itself, and I don't think there's any shame in negotiating a really good deal for you, provided it's not ludicrous or exorbitant. Because it's basically like when I'm referring to myself there, that I know that if you pay me less than this, then you're lowballing me, and that means that I don't know the game yet. So if you ask for a reasonable amount, then that's just knowing the game. And so you get either one of two options, and both are awesome. A, they shut you down, and they weren't going to take me seriously because they're not here to actually play ball and pay what is reasonably afforded to a professional. Or B, they do, and you have a much better relationship with them because you've established that, okay, they respect me as a professional. You're going to have to rise to that standard. So that's what I would say for you, Sassy Lynn. All right, next one. Let's check it out. All right, this is from Rowan, and he loves the Gibson SG. So we love you, Rowan. Thank you very much. Okay. To give context, I visited Japan 2015, and I made it a goal to move there. Found my videos for that reason. Got a bachelor in music. I ended up, you got a job with Interact. I was excited. You went around the Royal Caribbean as a guitarist. Very cool. Money was good. 4 years on Royal Caribbean and working as a professional freelance guitarist in Australia. That's awesome. Touring around there. Opportunity came to teach in Tokyo again, and I turned it down, scared to leave a career I've worked so hard to develop. But since COVID hit, I decided I need to take action and kindly still have the opportunity open for me. So here's my question. The guitar teaching job is similar salary to Interact, which seems low. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you know how easy it is to freelance in Japan on top of salary job regarding visas, or even jumping between jobs, getting a job at university and so on? It seems confusing. I have a master's equivalent degree from Australia and have a diverse guitarist resume, notable names touring. That's so cool. This is very, very cool. So what I would say is you can actually, if you get your work visa or whatever, you can, up until I believe it's maybe 200,000 yen in addition in a year. You could make that and the government won't even bat an eye. But you can also apply for, I can't remember the exact name for it, but it's an amendment that you can get on your work visa that allows you to do certain alternative work, which I believe something like if you were doing guitar gigs, you could totally do and it'd be all on board. And you wouldn't have to worry about somebody, knocking on your door late at night, something like that. And I really do think that if you were a guitarist and if you were living in a major center like Tokyo, that, oh man, you would have some pretty incredible opportunities come up for you. And there are, to say, in teaching there is all the time, like a lot of international schools require, they want like guitarists and people to teach that kind of thing. But I would say barring that, because I don't want to just pigeonhole you into like the only way you're going to strum that guitar again is for babies, like it's not like that. I think you could definitely look at some other alternative gigs and you can get your visa amended to allow for that extra work while you're giving yourself a base perhaps of teaching. And then the sky is no limit, as I like to say. Who knows what you could, what fingers you could get into what pots at that point. So yeah, I think you could definitely get over, and I absolutely encourage it because there's this whole world, right? Like this is something I talk about where there is a whole world of existence to all of us that is right under our noses, and it's sort of this like Alice in Wonderland thing where you won't know unless you go. And you don't know unless you look, unless you turn the rock over, you don't know that it's there. And there's like, I think in today's day and age, I could probably meet an infinite line of people who would tell me, this is my job. And I would say to them, I didn't know that existed. So the only way that you find those is if you go looking for it. So I think that that's really, really important to toss yourself into it. So go for it, Rowan. Thanks very much for checking out the podcast. I appreciate that very, very much. Okay, let's check the next. Okay. Computer network. This is from Carson, computer networking major. I know unless you use some crazy good program, it seems that still basic tech jobs, they want you to know Japanese, already have a visa. Not require much. I'm just starting to learn Japanese. What would you say of the idea of doing teaching program just to get my foot in Japan, where you can much easier start to learn Japanese and have other advantages? Yeah, that would be fine. And this he says, sorry for the ramble. Nah, it's not a ramble at all, Carson, not at all. I would say, yeah, teaching is just the hands down, no-brainer, easy foot in the door. You can get a working visa. You could probably get like part-time work. You just pay, live that minimal lifestyle and get your Japanese up. And probably not even, I have to say, when you're a programmer, getting your Japanese up it's good. Like, that's great. You want to do that, but you're probably not even going to have to worry about that. Honestly, more the issue would be something like a work visa, and that would be like the specialist engineer in humanities that you would want to get to be able to work. So I kind of, if you wanted to streamline that, it would be working for an eikaiwa, so something like Peppy Kids Club, because that's the work visa that they award. And then you would already have the visa that you would need were you to do an IT job. And let me tell you, there are certain IT jobs that are great here, but you need that kind of visa, and they won't sponsor you. They'll only renew it. So if you have it, they'll help you get it again. But if you don't have it, they're not going to do anything about it. So yeah, man, you could come over. That's totally a path that you have available to you. Okay, this is cool. We got one here. Hi, Dave. This is Jim. Hi, Jim. Canadian, 41, engineer, right on. No proficiency in Japanese, never taught English. Like many people wanting to go over, I have gravitation towards Japanese culture. When I was younger, partly spurred on by becoming friends with a Japanese family that moved to our neighborhood. What a lovely story. I regret never going over to teach while in my 20s, although regret is probably not the best word. I didn't even know if that was something one could do. Is there any unique barriers or issues which an older person may face? Well, ageism, naturally. When you come over, you're going to have people with that kind of mindset that's like, what's a person who's older doing this? This is a younger man's game. But then it's easily overcome. That's your bullshit to deal with, is somebody maybe pigeonholing you, putting you in a box for that reason, but it doesn't have to be. I gotta say, I mean, you're an engineer. I don't know why you wouldn't pursue that when you were here. If you were an engineer, you're 41, you probably were an engineer for at least 5 years, I would think. And so you could leverage that with something that you could do once you got your foot in the door, so on and so forth. So yeah, I did a video recently too that you might want to check out, Jim, called I'm Too Old to Live in Japan, and I discussed this in much greater detail. All right, we got this one from Dre. Contract, going through jet. I'm interested in creating my... okay. My question for you or Dean is this. Can you give me advice on how to secure a position at an international school based on my teaching experience? Lastly, can you give me a ballpark figure of what a teacher in a position similar to what Dean did, how much salary they made a month? Okay, so getting into a international school is no different than any other. With the background that you have here, you say that you were a jet, 2 years teaching in public schools in Korea, tons of experience. That's cool. It would be no different. It's just hunting them down. There's one in Tokyo called K-Space. That's where Dean used to work, and they pay a lot of money, and they work you for it. So I think Dean was just shy of $400,000 per month that he was making there, and you could go even higher than that. So apply, hunt them down. Maybe just look up International School Tokyo on Google, see what comes up, and you might find something there that works for you. That's what I would suggest. All right, so I think we perhaps end on this note here. We get this one from Brian, and he says, "Hey, Brian, I'm from San Antonio, Texas. Cool. When you first arrived in Japan, did it drive you crazy to see that it was a cash-based society? Did you ever wish that credit and / debit cards were more common?" I think initially I did. I totally did. I was like, why are you supposed to be the country of the future? Why are you so cash-based? This is ridiculous. But then I noticed that there were some upsides to it as well, particularly that if you can't use that, say a cash card or something, that when you use cash, it does not matter the denomination. No one will ever get mad at you, no matter the size. So you could go into a store, a convenience store, and you could drop like ichiman yen, $100, more than $100 in my Canadian Monopoly money, and you could buy something that cost $1, and people don't think a second thought of it. It's nothing to them that you would have used that, which is really kind of awesome and convenient. That it's like it's cash, so whatever cash you got is the cash that works, and that's cool. And I really, really, really like that. I do think that it's like well overdue to be updated. I mean, I had an experience recently that drove me nuts where I've had this cash card for I don't know what it is now, years, like probably around 5 years. And after that 5 years, it started to crack. And so I went in, and this is a cash card, by the way, that I don't pay for anything with. It's just what I take money out from an ATM with. And they said, oh, well, because it's cracked, if we replace it, we're still going to charge you $11. I was like, for what? Like, this is a 5-year-old card. I don't even get to use this card to be able to like pay for things in different places, and you're going to charge me $11? You can tell how rich I am, that $11 annoys me so much, but it seemed so absurd to me, and that was an example. And you run into places where it is an inconvenience because they'll only take cash, and it'll be a place that you think, well, this is like totally modern, and there should be no reason that if I don't have cash, at the very least I could use a credit card, but you can't do that. You have to use cash. So you do bump heads with the occasion where the cash society really is a pain in the ass, but for the most part, I just really, really revel in the fact that I can drop $100 bill to buy, a dollar item, and they've got so much cash in the register that it's just like business as usual, and no one cares. So yeah, I've grown accustomed to it. It's also nice too, that tactile sense of your money. I like that when something costs money and you like, you take out all the bills, and it's this quite dramatic scene where you like stack them up, you know. Holding something physical is, of course, it's an experience that I enjoy as much as it's empowering to be the all digital robot being who just taps his card and that's all you have to do to pay for things. So that was a fun question. Thank you, Brian, for keeping it light there. All right, guys, this was awesome. It was great to get back at you. I really hope that you enjoyed listening to this. Please do subscribe. Love to have you on the team. It does not have a name. Please do hit the bell notification to be let known when any video goes live on the channel for those of you catching it there. Thanks to everybody on iTunes, Spotify as well. And closing off, I'll say please do consider supporting me on Patreon because it means the world to me and it is how this channel truly grows. But for now, the clock has run out. I'll catch you in the next episode.